transition pictures for Alan Watts, the Zen philosophy guy who died in 1973. Really interesting man in a way. He wrote a lot of books, like 25 books, about life and Buddhism and Hinduism and so on, trying to discover practical ways to apply spiritual principles. And he's become more and more influential over the years because of YouTube, and people listen to his lectures on there. And his books, I've downloaded 2, which I intend to read because I was so fascinated by him. I thought, I really need to know what this guy knows because he seems really, really switched on. In his teachings, he espoused 5 distinct principles. First of all, you are not your thoughts. Number 2, you and the universe are one. Something we tend to accept as normal these days, but that was fairly revolutionary back in the 50s and 60s. Number 3, have faith in unseen forces in the universe to guide your feet along the path. Relax, allow it to happen. Surrender to bigger forces. Number 4, embrace change, because change is happening all the time. Life is about change. There's no point in resisting it. And 5, live in the present. Don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about tomorrow. Live in the present. Interesting. And he was very, very concerned with the difference between the me we show to the world and the real me on the inside. He was married 3 times. He was very unfaithful. He was a bit of a rogue. A very, very heavy smoker, a very, very heavy drinker. And ultimately, this caused him to die in his 50s, which is a terrible shame. But he would say that most people die before they are dead. That was one of his things, that we don't live our full lives because of tribal scripts, the old thing again, the limitations put on us by other people instead of being authentic. And he wanted to live authentically, even if you die younger, which of course doesn't matter in spiritual terms, but if you die younger physically in the mortal world, it doesn't matter as long as you've been authentic and lived your fullest life. And he would have said that he did. When I went into the pictures, there was that same cave I always see. And he wasn't there initially. What happened was that I looked up and he was floating down like a feather, floating lightly until he hit the ground in the softest way. He had waited for this. He didn't mind this at all. Death to him didn't seem anything but a welcome reprieve from the rigors of his life. He lived, he died, and the continuum was fine with him. There was no tension. There was no mystery. There were no demands for where am I and where's Jesus and all. There was none of this. It was so quiet and lovely and gentle. He accepted that the long haul of mortal existence was over. Fine, I'm here. I made it. And now he wanted to explore. This was just one more field of inquiry. It's like an intellectual examination of where he was, who he was now, what had happened. He just wanted to see, educate himself. He went across the cave area and just strolled. Almost like you would do with your hands in your pockets with your slippers on, like, yeah, whistling. Just curious and gentle and agreeable and accepting. And he comes to the tunnel, starts walking up it, but he wants to savor this. It isn't just a matter of getting from A to B and ending it all. He has so much to think about. It's a very intellectual transition, this. The mind, the consciousness, is still thinking, where am I? What is this? What is this made of? Ooh, I love the way this feels. The womb-like balminess of the air. I love this. And he zigzags very contemplatively up the tunnel, eager to satiate himself in the experience, to the point where he not only walked forward, but he also walked backwards so that he could see where he'd been, get the full 360-degree panorama. It was all a big adventure to him. He arrives where the dome is, fully present, mindfully reverential, dawdling out of sheer fascination. And he approaches the dome light thing I always see, and he mutters something like, "Ah, so here you are, my beauty." And he wants to feel it. He wants to grab onto this thing and just press it against him. He wants that experience of leaning on it. And he makes the mistake of thinking it's a solid surface, which to a certain extent it always feels that way when I do the pictures, but actually it's not really. It's absorbent. And he leans on it with a view to simply experiencing the texture of what this thing is. But in so doing, he sinks into it. As I've said before, like a banana into custard. Deeper, deeper, and gone. The real question with Alan Watts is, where are his ego markers and the things that have to be torn down based on his mortal existence? Why does he not have those? I don't have much of an answer, but I did feel that his intellectualization of everything was his attempt to suppress those emotions that he was unwilling to experience firsthand. And by drinking heavily towards the end of his life, and by messing around with various women and so on, he was able to avoid experiencing the really deep emotions that would otherwise have tormented him. These Eastern cultures are very much about holding yourself in, about discipline, about conducting yourself in a way that doesn't bring you into disrepute. They're very intellectual in that kind of way. And my feeling with him was that in life he intellectualized away his worst feelings, and the ones he couldn't deal with mentally, he drowned in alcohol and sex and indulgences in other ways. But by the time he crossed over and he floated down like a feather, he was a spent force as a mortal. He had lived to the fullest. He was one of those people who didn't die before he physically died. He lived his life 100%. And by the time he was in transition, he had nothing to shed. He was ready to go. This was his big moment, and he embraced it with the same exuberance and enthusiasm he embraced regular life as a mortal. That's what I got from that. Wasn't emotional, but it was so interesting. What happens if we just live life to the fullest? I don't think any of us really does that. We all compromise. We all listen to other people's scripts. And we try to fit in, try to be accepted, try to get validation for who we are. He seemed like one of those people who didn't do that because of what he'd learned from the Eastern cultures. So interesting. Alrighty, that's Alan Watts. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. As always, subscribe, like, share. That would be great. Or follow me on Twitter @CashPeters. That would be good too. All right, thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.